This is Evelyn Lopez. Welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear, the Earth911.com podcast for the week of September 9th, 2019. We are coming to you from the on the cusp of fall crispiness Moonyard Studio in beautiful Tacoma, Washington. And I must say, it is beautiful this morning. So after Labor Day and with the start of a new school year, I always feel like, it's kind of a chance for a fresh start, maybe making some changes around your house, looking to make things better. So we want to talk today about all kinds of bits and pieces about electronic recycling, water filters, satellite TVs. But first, let's welcome our participants. We have Mitch Ratcliffe, our Earth911 publisher. Mitch, how are you today?
Doing great. Welcome, everybody, to the show.
And our Earth911 writer, Sarah Lozanova. Sarah, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Evelyn.
Excellent. And how are things in Maine?
It's beautiful and sunny and warm.
It's just the best time of year, I think.
It is.
Yeah. So, hey, Mitch, before we launch into our stories from the website, you were telling us something about light bulbs. What is up with that?
Well, yeah, our fearless or fearful leader, depending on how you want to look at him, has been running roughshod over environmental policy in the United States and largely in the background. But this week he did something really kind of surprising, which was voided Obama-era regulations that would have required the phasing out of incandescent and other light bulbs that were not energy efficient. And according to the White House, the reason for doing that is to increase our freedoms. Mm-hmm. So let me just quote Shaylin Hines, who's a spokesman for the Department of Energy. This is what she said to the New York Times. The law requires the department to issue standards only when doing so would be economically justified, and these standards are not. She said the administration's actions will ensure that the choice of how to light homes and businesses is left to the American people, not the federal government. God, we are smacking of socialism with these lighting rules, and so we have to crush them. But let's look at what the Department of Energy says about exactly these light bulbs. This is from the Energy Saver site on the Department of Energy website. You can find it at energy.gov. And it says that LED bulbs used in residential settings that are Energy Star rated, so the things that are being phased out as new requirements, use 75% less energy and last 25 times longer than incandescent lighting. That is a massive savings. How big a savings? Well, according to the Department of Energy, widespread use of those lights by 2027 would reduce the need for electric production by 348 terawatts. That is a massive amount of electricity, probably around 15% of our total consumption as a country. That's the equivalent of 44 large electric power plants chugging along, pouring out carbon dioxide, and would save the consumer $30 billion in electricity prices per year. So everything that the administration said to justify this is contradicted by the facts. And this call for freedom is simply a whitewash of the fact that they are just protecting the manufacturers of incandescent bulbs from competition from these new mandated products. And it's just sad. And we wanted to point it out. This is not to say that you should hate Trump or anything like that. It is just to point out that they make these decisions and they justify them with lies. And so there you go. What do you guys think?
I think it's such an interesting argument that they would use financial reasons, because that's exactly why I think a policy like this is so important. Because if you're standing in the store and you're like, okay, this box of bulbs is $5 and this box is $2, it can be really hard to tell, and in 10 years, how is this purchase going to impact my finances? And what it'll result in is lower electric bills and lower replacement costs, but it's hard to see that when you're looking at a package,
And the standards can actually drive both the surfacing of that information on the packaging and the adoption of this so that the price overall falls. And that's the real goal here, is to make energy efficiency affordable.
Yeah.
And another thing that's interesting about incandescent bulbs is they give off a lot of waste heat. Mm-hmm. And so people in warmer climates don't want that waste heat. So not only is it wasting energy, but then they have to cool their home more to compensate for.
So what can we do today to counter this bad decision?
Well, one of the things that I would definitely do, and I think I may look into, is whether your state Department of Energy or Ecology or your state legislature is looking at issues like this. Because one of the things that we've seen in the distant past and in the current, in the present, is that state regulations can often be stronger than federal ones. The federal regulations sort of set the baseline, and the state ones can be, higher. So, for example, California setting mileage standards for cars, they're setting it for California. They can set it higher than the federal because you can always go higher, you can't go lower. But the reality of it is that California is such a giant market for cars that it really impacts the industry. So I would say that would be this first strategy I would look at is, particularly on the West Coast and in the Northeast, are states looking at renewing these types of regulations on a state basis. And that sort of just, cuts the center out of whatever federal regulations might do.
Well, and I think that what we're going to see is states and groups of states getting together to do those kind of things. But because of the broad brush kind of changes that are being made by the Trump administration, it's going to be very difficult to react in any kind of comprehensive way to this until it's all over.
Yeah, I agree. And I haven't looked at those regulations or their justification for, drawing back on what was the prior plan. But I would say you probably have some attorneys general around the country looking at that too, and whether they can file a lawsuit. And that has been a very effective strategy because the lawsuit goes in and you also file an injunction. So you're saying to the government, you can't do this, and we're not going to let you even start doing it until we have a court hearing on this matter. And that just sort of takes the wind out of it entirely and gives you a time to sort of figure out your strategy.
Well, it would be great for us to have that debate, and if we have to use the courts to do it, that's unfortunate. But the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace every bulb in my house that isn't currently replaced with an LED with one.
Yeah,
and let's just start to do this.
Do it.
What they're trying to do is discourage competition for old technology, and the new technology is so much more efficient. I mean, just the savings on a 60-watt traditional incandescent bulb. Compared to any CFL or any LED, $4.80 a year in extra energy costs. So if you buy that pack of 4 bulbs or 2 bulbs for $4.80, you're going to buy it 25 times before the alternative bulb would have expired, and you're going to spend the same amount on the energy as the bulbs that many times. It is just it's absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
So let's do it. Let's show the world we can pick the right technology.
I think that's a really good point, Mitch, because with policies that don't support us making smart decisions, it basically means that we need to be making informed decisions when we're in the stores. And sometimes I feel like you need a PhD to kind of figure out which soap to buy or something. It's not that rare that I stand around reading labels and Googling things and I still can't figure out what to buy after 10 minutes. But with bulbs, it is fairly simple, so look for LED bulbs. Definitely don't buy incandescents. And I was surprised recently when I went bulb shopping how many incandescents are still on the shelf. So if you're not really paying attention, you can pick up a pack of them. And sometimes they even say things like energy efficient on them. So you kind of think you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, and there's a good book that came out just in the last couple of weeks by Tatiana Schlossberg, who's been a New York Times writer, called Inconspicuous Consumption, the Environmental Impact You Don't Know You Have. And this book just makes you aware of all of these sorts of impacts that and costs that are hidden in the way that we live today. Bill McKibben didn't give it the greatest review. And I thought for some of the wrong reasons, because he was looking for, as he put it, collectivist approaches that would solve this problem. And I think it's a combination of individual and collective decisions. But Tatiana Schlossberg's Inconspicuous Consumption is a good way to just to start thinking about this. And of course, that's one of the things we're trying to help people understand here at Earth911.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I think one of the things that's so it's kind of depressing when one of these stories comes out is that, we've been talking quite a bit about how much power consumers have and how, you can sort of be the change in the world, but you need to, tell the manufacturers what you really want, and they will, then try to meet your need. And so then when you have the federal government, come in and sort of say, never mind, let's not do anything at all, it's defeating. But it also shows you, we still have that consumer power. So if the information can be presented in really digestible format, and that's, one of the things I really have enjoyed about getting to know deeply the Earth 911 website is that the stories we put out there are very digestible and easily understandable. And I think if you do a story on, sort of lighting your house, here are the do's and the don'ts. And I always go back to thinking when I was in high school and would read Glamour magazine. At the back, there was the Glamour do and the Glamour don't. And just, boil it down into sort of like, you want to make a difference? Here's a way you can make a difference. Here are the light bulbs that you want to be buying. Here's what you want to use outside. If you can do solar powered, here's what you want to do inside. I think that could be extremely powerful too.
Well, it starts with awareness. We're doing these We Earthling posters that you can share with folks to make them more aware. And last week's was about the carbon impact of flying on a 737-400 from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. And just your seat's worth of the CO2 output is 943 pounds of CO2. That's about the same amount as an average household of 4 produces in 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
So, all we need to do is think about what's important and choose not to be so impactful. That also allows you to make some choices that may be impactful. Those trade-offs, as we've always talked about, are how we're going to work out what the shape of freedom looks like in the future, but it's got to be a sustainable freedom or there won't be freedom.
Well, let's jump from that and talk about, talking about sort of things you recycle or things you might be looking at to make a change around your house. One of those things is satellite TV. A lot of buildings that I see around town have the satellite dishes attached to them, and I always do wonder whether people are still using them or if they're left over from another time. But what do you do with your satellite dishes, Mitch?
Well, I actually don't buy them in the first place.
Yeah, I haven't bought one yet either, and I don't expect that I will. But
and it seems that everybody who buys it is told that it's easy to recycle, and then when they get to the end of the life, we got a question on Facebook this very morning about exactly this question. I have a Sony dish system. Is Sony going to take it back? And the answer is probably not. You can take these to e-waste programs. There are programs that will come and remove them and take them away for a fee. Those cost around $80 to $100 for a visit. And many people think, and many of the dish providers tell them that Earth 911 will actually recycle it, which we don't.
Well, I don't know. Where do they even get that from? I mean, I don't think Earth 911 has ever run a we will take your recycling and take care of it for you service.
No, I've been in contact with AT&T, DirecTV, and Dish. All three of them say, "Oh, we would never tell that to anybody." And I get questions from people through the feedback mechanism every day from folks who are told by their Dish representatives or other people that Earth will take them. And we don't. And we're working on a new recycling program that might be able to help with this, but we don't do it yet. So right now you need to take this to an e-waste program. The receiver, the box itself, can probably be dropped off at a Staples or a Best Buy. Particularly Best Buy is very willing to take virtually any electronics for recycling. But it is not something that that you should expect the satellite provider to own up to.
Yeah, this is producer Doug. I just wanted to chime in because I was speaking with a professional landscaper, and what he did is he uses the large discs that people used to have. My parents had those, and uses them as the framework to build pools, like in people's backyards,
really?
Like garden pools,
like ponds, small.
Yeah, like little ponds. So yeah, pond would be the right word. Yeah. So he just uses those. He lays them in the ground. Those become the structure that he then puts in the concrete or fiberglass or whatever, and actually uses it to make pools. So
That's pretty clever.
Well, that's great. And so don't just think about having it recycled. Think about possibly having it repurposed.
But I will say, especially on some apartment buildings, it does look like it's had generations of people have moved in and moved out and changed their cable or their dish and just left all of the equipment behind. So there's a lot of this stuff out there in need of recycling or containment of some kind.
Well, and at this time of the year, you're seeing football promotions where you want to sign up for Dish to get the Sunday ticket stuff. It's real easy to get caught up in this, and a few years later, you're going to be left with some junk. Mm-hmm. The question is what you do with it, and we hope that you'll take care of it responsibly. And, of course, you can check our Earth911 recycling search to find local options. Yeah.
Well, what about other electronics? That is something, and especially I would say both in the fall, I always think with school starting, you're busy looking at a whole host of new things you need to purchase and get set up, and that causes you to look at getting rid of your old stuff. What about, other electronics that people might be looking at replacing or recycling?
Well, a thing to keep your eye out for is what we describe as a stealth electronic, which is something that's plugged in and constantly dripping electricity as it's using it. So anything with an LED, coffee water heaters, for instance, that turn out automatically in the morning are using a timer to turn on. And so even though they appear to be saving power most of the time, they're also using more power than they should. So all sorts of small appliances. And again, this is an area where you can take these things to Staples, to Best Buy, and drop them off for recycling if you're done with them. It's important not to just toss them into your trash or into your recycling. Most recycling programs will not take those kinds of electronics. You need to drop them off somewhere. And if you don't have a municipal program that accepts them, Staples and Best Buy are good options. Cell phones are another one. A lot of people go through a phone every couple of years. What you want to keep in mind about all of these things, but cell phones more than anything else, is they have some harmful metals in it too, that if they get into the environment and break down there, can be genuine causes of pollution for groundwater. It makes the soil that it's in unuseful in the future. So taking all these things to the right kind of drop-off program, your local e-waste, they might have one in the fall and one in the spring program. They'll set up a day where they'll take all these things in. So watch out for those. Don't just toss these things back out into the wild.
Sarah, let me ask you, I know you've done some articles in the past year about, sort of doing a review of the amount of vampire electronics in your house. Mm-hmm. What are some other things that people should be sort of paying attention to with the stealth electronics?
Yeah, when I've done this, what I noticed, I have a meter, it's called a kilowatt meter, and it'll measure what each load is using. So for example, you could plug your fridge into it for a day and say, okay, it used 2 kilowatt hours of electricity. What I found most surprising when I did it is office equipment and entertainment equipment can drain a lot. So the first time I did it, I had a DVD player that was draining like 3 or 4 watts continuously. I believe the television was, all these different things were draining, and it wasn't a particularly alarming amount individually, but it was like 3 watts here, 4 watts there, 5 watts here. And then suddenly it's like, well, that's, a significant amount of power. So I put these things on power strips and then just turned them off. Or you can just unplug them too. So like if you have a printer and you use it once a month, it's probably best just to unplug it instead of having it in the standby mode, which is what Mitch was speaking to. Mm-hmm. So anything you go long periods of time without using, unless you know for sure it's not draining, I say just unplug it.
Well, remember the scene in Apollo 13 where they're trying to figure out how to get the astronauts back to Earth using just the power they had on board the ship. And we don't think about it that way, but your budget is just like that limit. You don't want to go over it. You don't want to spend more money than that. So you need to turn these things off. There's a lot of hidden things to what Sarah was saying. Smart TVs are using power all the time to listen for commands. The same with smart speakers in the homes. So if you're using a Google device or an Amazon device, they're using power constantly, both to talk to the internet and to listen to you. Printers are a good example of it. All of your computer equipment. So if your screens just go into standby at night, they're still using power too. So these are all options for the power strip. Just turn them all off at one time when you're done for the day.
It's amazing how many gadgets we have too. You know, like many homes will have numerous things related to entertainment and home computing and things like that. So there's quite a few things to explore. It's not a very simple task to take on, but I think entertainment and office are two really good places to start.
Yeah, and as smart homes get more prolific, and one of the things to keep in mind about the new 5G networks that the telecom carriers are rolling out is they support 1.2 million devices per square mile.
Wow.
If you just think about how many more devices that means coming into our homes, and some of them can be really good for energy efficiency. A smart thermostat, for instance, can actually lower your overall use. It's going to be on all the time. So that's one you're not going to want to turn off. But if you have a Ring camera that is using power off your house, that's going to be constantly watching for motion and then turning on the video camera and then communicating with the network. Just keep all this in mind as we assemble more stuff and think about what we can do without and what we can do to reduce the power usage of those things we deem important.
Well, the other thing we wanted to talk about, we've had a couple of really good recent stories on water filters. And Sarah, I'll ask you, since I know you were one of the writers of one of these stories, tell us a little bit about the quest for plastic-free water filters.
Yeah, it was a challenging quest. So I definitely have my concerns about plastic, and we consume nearly 300 million metric tons globally. So I think water is a great place to start. Many of us buy disposable water bottles. And then when I was thinking, well, you know, filtering your water is a great alternative, but it's still most of the filtration systems use a lot of plastic. And then a lot of these items are kind of like the satellite dish where it becomes really complex to try to figure out how to recycle them at the end of use. So I was really only able to come up with 3 water filtration systems, at least at the time when I wrote this, which was about 7 months ago, that don't use plastic or use very little. So the zero water glass dispenser was one, and the Big Berkeley is another, and the Soma glass carafe. Those were the 3 that I profiled in the story, and they all kind of serve different uses. You know, like the zero water filter has a 40-cup glass canister, and it disperses water. And that one seemed like one of the best, but that wouldn't be ideal for every household. And the Berkey filter also seemed pretty similar. It has a stainless steel body.
Yeah, there's also somewhere you can just buy, for instance, carbonized bamboo and use that in the water, basically filtering with a simple strainer. But the carbon absorbs the impurities. That was another approach, is not to look necessarily for a filter, but just something that will filter the water in your container.
Yeah, and another approach people have taken that I found out about online is to refill your own Brita filters. Basically to get activated charcoal, like from a pet store, and then you drill a hole, you take out the old activated carbon, you refill it, and then you plug it up. I don't know that it would make it quite as effective as the original Brita filter, because it doesn't have you can't change the ion exchange resin, which is part of the filtration system. But that's another, if you're looking for like a real low cost way, that's another option too.
And speaking of the smart home, one of the things that we found last year was the tap water with 2 P's, TAPP water filter, which screws onto the faucet. And in addition to having a compostable filter, so when you're done with the filter, you can put it in the compost and it'll break down. It measures how much water you're using, which is another interesting bit of data that you can link up to other aspects of your health. So I think you're going to see more and more options like this that combine some technology, network technology, with better materials. Tap water's the thing that screws onto the faucet is not completely compostable, but that's not the part you throw away. It's the filter that goes in it. And so I think it's a good option to consider as well.
And another thing too, a lot of tap water is treated with chlorine. And if you put chlorinated water in a cup overnight, a lot of the chlorine will just evaporate out. So if that's one of the things that you're most concerned about in your water, just leaving the water out, for say a 12-hour period helps remove some of it.
So what do you do, Evelyn, in terms of your water?
Oh, I'm kind of weird about water. So I just got on the bandwagon quite a long time ago about how stupid bottled water was, because you don't really know where the water comes from at all. It's just in a bottle. Whereas your tap water goes through an extensive filtration process and is regulated locally and statewide. And so you're much safer to just drink your tap water, especially if you live someplace like this where your tap water tastes good. So I'm just a tap water person. But I will say, I am also someone who is easily seduced by anything that looks like an interesting, weird potion. And those sticks of charcoal that you soak in your water, I just think, I don't know, I might have to try some charcoal sticks in my water and see what a difference that makes.
It seems kind of like a fun way to do it, too.
Yeah.
I think your kids could get excited about that, adding it and taking it out over time.
Yeah, I think so. It would be interesting. The articles say that the water tastes pretty good after it's, the charcoal's been in there sort of soaking up what few impurities there are. But yeah, for me, I don't worry too much about it. I just think we have a really good, we are lucky. We live in a place where the water is coming off of mountains, so it tastes good. And our local water is run by Tacoma Power and Water, and it's very well regulated. So I just drink tap water.
Yeah, and everybody should be aware of what's in their water, and their utility should be providing a annual report describing all of the impurities in the water. That's something you can check, just as you can check whether or not your power is being generated by green power. It's another way to make a difference.
It's also a way to connect you to a sense of place. If you're drinking the water from the mountains, it's grounding, and it somehow connects you more to the water than just, I got in a bottle and I don't really even know what state it came from, and maybe it's from another country. There's just no connection then to what you're drinking.
Yeah. Well, here in the Puget Sound area, it's water coming from the Green River. But I remember in San Francisco, everybody knew the name of the reservoir in the Sierra Nevada, Hetch Hetchy, was where their water came from, because it tasted good. And it was a point of pride, as you're saying, a local identity.
Yeah. And I will say, growing up in Southern California, our water was coming from the Colorado River, and it did not taste particularly good. It tasted, it didn't taste like it was, contaminated, but it's very much a lowland river water. And so the minerals in that are kind of have a little bit of a soapy taste. So we did have a water, all the time growing up, we had a water delivery service that, dropped off big, 5-gallon containers of, Arrowhead water.
Well, the Cadillac Desert, as a classic book from the late 80s about water use in the West, pointed out that at the time, water in the Colorado River, by the time it reached where the Colorado River dries up, because it doesn't actually reach the sea anymore, it had been through 18 animals, including humans.
Wow.
And then reused. So yummy.
So that's efficient in a way, and yet not very exciting. Not very
completely
attractive.
Destroyed the river as a spawning source of a lot of fish.
Yeah. Yeah, so I will say if you live someplace where your water does not taste good, then definitely I would say a filter on your tap is a better option than getting, water delivered. Because again, I mean, it looks great, but where does the water come from and what impacts does it have where it's being taken out?
Well, that's a good step in the right direction. So we've got LED light bulbs, better water filters, and cut off the vampire power in the house. 3 good things to do this week.
3 good things to do. Start your fall off with all the good intentions. So, Mitch, want to talk about some Earthling questions?
Let's go for it. And let's start with Karen in Indianapolis, who's a teacher, and she asked about schools using laminating machines and how that generates a ton of excess plastic sheeting. She wants to know what kind of plastic is used in school laminators and how and where can schools recycle all our leftover lamination that won't land in a landfill or in a manatee's belly in the ocean.
Yes. Well, this is interesting. This is one of the things I find so interesting about schools because as much as there are new technologies coming in and more computer-based things, a lot of it is still kind of the same stuff as when we were kids.
Oh, yeah.
And so, laminated stuff. I know it's important to have, cards and charts and things that are laminated, but that does make it difficult. So, Mitch, what do you do about that?
Yeah, so the material itself is plastic number 1 generally.
Mm-hmm. So that's the laminating material.
Right. And those come in 2 sheets, and then you've got this heater that binds them together around whatever paper you put in there. The paper, once it's laminated, is very difficult to recover for recycling. Mm-hmm. But you can cut the edges around that paper and recycle just the plastic. Mm-hmm. And there's also all the waste plastic from the production process where you cut it to fit the right thing.
Yeah.
So all of that can be recycled, but the paper that has been laminated probably is not going to be accepted because it's not really economically viable to separate the 2 materials. So a couple of things to do. One is use less laminating plastics, obviously. And then the second is cut those plastic-only portions out and send those through. And I did get a note back saying that Karen and her school are going to start doing that. So good to see that.
That's good. Yeah, that definitely saves some things. And I think it's nice that they're starting to just think about things like, if we laminate, let's say, all of these things, then it's not so recyclable. Do we really want to laminate them, or can we leave them on like cardstock paper where they might get a little bent, but they'll be recyclable at the end?
I have my wife teaches, and I know the reason that the cards end up being laminated is they get torn so frequently.
Yeah.
And so there is... And I think this is one of those trade-off questions is, let's say you have a card that is going to go through 5 classes hands over the course of the year. That's a couple hundred kids.
Yeah.
How many times it get torn? If it's going to get torn 3 or 4 times, you may actually be better off just laminating something and using it for years.
Yeah. It's kind of like a restaurant where they have their menus. If you're doing things that either change over regularly, you may just want to keep your menu on regular paper. But if you're if you have a pretty set menu, then probably the lamination is going to save you in the long term because otherwise they get, messed up pretty quickly.
Well, this next one is an interesting one about starting a business. Camillus.
Yeah, I thought this was a good one for you too because you've been looking at different ways that a recycling business could take off. So Camillus says. Would love to start a small recycling battery firm. How can I recycle my UPS batteries? Please, I need steps.
Well, and it's great to see people thinking about this. And as you mentioned, Evelyn, we are thinking about how to enable recycling programs, and particularly to enable individuals to start doing recycling, maybe even specialized materials on behalf of their neighbors. So hopefully we'll have more information that maybe you can just step in and start to use Camillus soon, but we haven't done it yet. But what I would urge you to do is take a look at the Institute for Scrap Recycling Industries, ISRI. It's at isri.org. They collaborate with the EPA to increase battery recycling. And so there's a lot of information on a site that they put together. So search on ISRI and EPA focus on lithium-ion battery processing. And I think you'll find that there's some good information there that will be applicable probably only in part to your UPS question, but to batteries in general, it's a great place to start. We also have a couple of articles, so if you search on Earth911 for battery recycling, you'll find your answers there. The key to starting one of these businesses is recognizing that you have to find the source of the material. And if you're going to focus on something very specific, like batteries, you need to connect with people who are going to get you enough of them to make it worthwhile. But what's worthwhile? If it's really genuinely a small business, a side gig, not that much material is necessary for you to start to make some money. The question is how much you want to make, and that's the challenge, is finding enough people with enough UPS and other forms of batteries that they need recycled.
Mm-hmm. Just what is a UPS battery?
A universal power system backup. It's the big chunky batteries that people have had in their basements or back behind the bookshelf for years, so that when the power goes off, their PCs stay on.
Oh, I learn something new every day. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, we have a last question. This one I think is very interesting. It's from Noah, who was on Facebook. And Noah says this: I have a need to start a change in my community. I would love to educate myself and people around me about recycling. I live in New Orleans, or I have for the past 6 years. Before that, I lived in a city that was very aware and active. Recycling bins almost in every corner. I would love to see that happening in New Orleans. I was wondering if anyone would know how to direct me and whom to talk to get this started.
Well, as a community leader and activist, how would you recommend that Noah engage the community?
Well, so I'll tell you, Noah, here's what I would do. First, I would do a little bit of research on what recycling resources might already exist in the New Orleans area. And I went online just very briefly and noticed that the garbage and the recycling services are conducted by a private company that has a contract. The company is, I think, Republic. And their recycling that they were offering on the website was only paper recycling. So to me, that says there's a real need here, definitely for maybe some glass recycling and maybe some plastics recycling. And the next thing I would probably do would be to contact my council person. And I'll tell you, the politics of parishes in Louisiana are just a complete mystery to me. I've never lived anywhere with that kind of system. But whatever the equivalent of your local council member is, contact that person and say, I'm really interested in recycling. Can you connect me with whatever the city or the parish is looking at with regard to recycling? Because I guarantee there's probably something, because there have been various grants and efforts over the years to do more recycling. And then I would also connect up with communities that are doing something. And one of the things I noticed when I was doing some online research is that there's a big move around Mardi Gras to recycle those Mardi Gras beads. I mean, they have like billions and billions of beads, and it is the Arc of New Orleans that takes in all of these beads. They have collection boxes even up for a very short period of time, collect your beads, and they then use this as a training and employment opportunity for individuals with developmental disabilities to sort through, clean and match up and prepare, repackage for reuse these Mardi Gras beads. So something like that, I think, is a really smart, issue-specific recycling. And I might contact the Arc of New Orleans and say, hey, how did you guys get started? Because this is a really good program. So that's what I would probably do.
That's a great approach. And I think that you've covered a lot of the high points, but it's really about deciding what you want to make a difference about. So right now, with the recycling environment changing so much and things like glass becoming uneconomical to recycle, you may want to try to focus on something like that, because we know there's a lot of it around, not currently being recycled.
Right.
And talking with your government, the other organization or entity within the government I would talk to is the Solid Waste Management Office for the city or the county. Both of those will have extensive information about what's going on in the county, and that's where you want to start figuring out what will make the biggest difference.
Yeah, I mean, you could just do a world of good, even if you were working with the bars in the French Quarter and helping coordinate some way of collecting up their empty beer bottles. I mean,
and the plastic that people drop on the street.
Yeah, I mean, that would be huge. That would be huge. You could by yourself have a significant impact just by, getting people talking and figuring out a couple of things you could do.
We also have a couple of articles on the site. One is 6 Steps to Starting a Community Recycling Program, and another is a series by Jason Arend that we had last year on Highland Park, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, that has a 40% consumer or residential recycling rate and a 70% business recycling rate, which is well above the average in the United States, which the EPA says is around 34.7%, but in recent years it might have been as low as 28%. And the kinds of steps that Highland Park took, finding out what they wanted to collect and whether they had the data on it, and then educating people. And that's really, that's where Earth911 has a lot of resources that we'd be happy to share as well if you want to start something in New Orleans. Getting people information so that they can make decisions about what they can recycle, what's easy to recycle, what's harder to recycle, helps them start to prioritize. And that consumer education, in every engagement I've had talking with companies and cities trying to build this up, comes out first. Help people understand, and then they'll start to take the actions that make sense.
I think that that's a really important point. One of the things that gets a little bit lost, I think, sometimes, especially when people are looking at recycling activity, sort of in a large, across-sector way, is that people want to recycle. People, sure, there's some people who probably don't care, but the vast majority of people really do want to recycle. They really want to know, how can I do this right? How can I minimize the amount of trash that I'm sending to the landfill? And so just providing an opportunity for people to figure out how to do it effectively is incredibly valuable.
So Noah, get out there and evangelize recycling knowledge, and you'll find yourself making a huge difference.
And report back, Noah. We'd love to hear how you go. So, Mitch, anything else before we close out today?
Well, do check out the new iRecycle app. It's on the Play Store and on the iTunes iOS store. You can search for and map locations that take the materials that you want to recycle. So it's the first step to answering the questions we were just talking about.
That's wonderful. So good. All right, then. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Sustainability in Your Ear. We hope you tune in to all of our conversations. You can find us on all of your podcast platforms. You can send us an email at feedback@earth911.com, and you can always find us at the Earth911 website. We will see you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye.